What's up, everybody? Welcome to Joe Talks Live, the Walking Dead edition. And this is actually my first episode back in a year. And I tell you what, I wasn't planning on bringing this back, but I got such a positive feedback. I was like, why not? Let's do it. And what better way to bring back Joe Talks Live than making an edition to where it's just dedicated to The Walking Dead, and also where I can bring on special guests like I have here my good friend Josh. We've known each other for a long time. How you doing, buddy?
Been pretty good, man. Excited to be on the show. Ready to talk about this awesome episode.
Awesome episode, man. And just spoiler alert right off the bat, if you haven't had a chance to watch the latest episode, you might want to go watch it first before you watch this because there's going to be some spoilers. We have a lot to talk about. And, I guess first starting off, what'd you think about last night's episode?
Man, that was a completely new direction for the show
Right.
because we've seen sort of a reoccurring theme throughout The Walking Dead where Rick and his group will be confronted by these threats and they'll kind of have to just band together and brute force their way through and overcome them. And I think a lot of people were thinking, okay, we heard in the premiere that the Saviors were going to come to Alexandria to collect this tribute. And a lot of people were thinking, okay, is this going to be like when they got stuck in Terminus and Carol showed up to save them, or when they had the fight at the prison and they actually fought back. But
Right.
this was a completely new direction because we saw Rick and his group more vulnerable than they've ever been, completely dominated and overpowered.
Absolutely. And, as we come to know this new character, Negan, in which, James Morgan.
Jeffrey D. Morgan, yeah, he's
Yeah,
a
Jeffrey D. Morgan. Sorry, I always get that name confused, but they couldn't pick the better dude to do it.
yeah, no pun intended, but he's knocking it out of the park
Right.
in this role.
Right. Oh, Lucille there. They couldn't pick the better actor to do it. I mean, he just brings that, he has a sense of humor to him, but also he is a butthole. I will go ahead and
Yeah,
say it.
super intense.
Super intense. He's like, it's either my way or, you're going to die. Just very much. And like you were talking about, Rick and the group has always had a way out.
Mm-hmm.
Always. And I guess we've come to kind of expect that.
Yep.
That's the reason why the creators are like, okay, we got to change it up a little bit.
Right.
We got to, put them in a situation to where, there's no way out.
No way.
No way out. And right now, as the series stands right now, there is no way out.
Yeah, they're in a tough spot, and we saw in that episode the amount of power that Saviors do have over them. For them to roll up, not only take their stuff, but to have Daryl there, a guy who's
Right.
been with them since Atlanta, and tell Rick, no, you can't talk to him, you can't look at him,
Right.
and to get to the point of not just taking half of their supplies, but bringing a checklist and
Right.
taking their guns and telling them, you're going to give us exactly what we ask for. And like that one line where Negan was like, we decide what is half. That was another powerful line where it's like, we will pretty much take whatever we want. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Right, right. Because, and that's another way of Negan pretty much breaking someone down.
Right.
He's making you think one thing, but in the meantime, he's like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
I mean this. It's like I say half, but really what I mean is you, like you said, you give me what I want.
Yep.
If you don't, then guess what? You're going to die. Lucille is going to be, a very, very thirsty vampire bat.
I love that line.
Yeah, I did too. I love it. And so, and which we're talking about Daryl, and we'll go ahead and elaborate on him more. He's to the point I know in the previous episode, they were trying to break him,
Mm-hmm.
and he told them, to pretty much screw off. He's not bowing,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, when we've seen in this episode where Negan does bring him to Alexandria to meet, well, pretty much see Rick in the group since the first time that incident happened where they lost Glenn and Abraham.
Yep.
It's just, you know, Negan gave him he's like, okay, persuade me,
Right.
make your case to let you stay here with Rick. And Daryl knew that no matter what he said, it wasn't going to happen.
No.
It wasn't going to happen. And it was just one of the things that I guess he's just said, I'm probably gonna have to bite a bullet here.
Yeah,
Probably.
he's mentally checked out too. And like we were talking about earlier, when a few seasons back, when Daryl and Beth got separated from everybody after the governor attacked the prison,
Right.
Beth was the one who was holding out hope, whereas Daryl was saying, they might as well be dead because you're never going to see him again. Just accept it. And
Right.
like we talked about, Daryl has that ability that when things do get tough, whereas other people will freak out or other people will kneel, he is that kind of person who can just mentally check out.
Yeah.
And that probably is, ironically enough, what Negan sees in him. Why Negan wants him to
Right.
be, part of the Saviors, because he has that ability to just kind of emotionally detach and check out,
Right.
but he's still maintaining that independence that people love about him. That whole thing: I'm never gonna kneel. I can be self sufficient.
Right.
Do what you will with me, but I'm not going to assimilate into this group.
Exactly. And like you were saying, I think Negan kind of sees himself in
Yeah,
Daryl in some type of way,
yeah,
because where he's just pretty much like, you could do whatever the frig you want
yeah,
to me, but I'm not gonna break. Plain and simple. And it's like, I'm not gonna listen to you. And Negan has the attitude that if things does not go his way, guess what? He's going to punish you. And I guess he's threatened by Daryl
yeah.
a little bit.
Because
He's
Daryl was the only one who stood up, at the premiere, and
right.
actually fought back, and we saw where that got him. But still,
Yeah, poor Glenn.
yeah,
And I think a lot of that has to deal with where Daryl's at right now. He's pretty much biting the bullet, taking one for the team. He's staying safe because he knows that Glenn's dead because of him,
yeah,
and that's weighing a lot on him.
yeah,
So he's just like, I'm just gonna, not say anything. I'm just gonna do what I'm told and play long. He's probably just gonna play long until he meets his moment,
yeah.
until that moment arises, and then he'll probably do something.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, even though they weren't allowed to talk, Daryl and Rick both seem to be taking a similar approach to dealing with Negan, where it's like, well, we know that our usual tactic of just fighting back, using our survival skills, our numbers, and our weapons to overcome this threat won't work this time. It's
Exactly.
worked in the past, but this is one instance where this is an antagonist that we can't overcome with our previous methods. So, it seems like they're both kind of trying to lay low, just roll with the punches for now, and maybe see if there's a way later on that they can fight back. And another character we were talking about that's really stepping up now is Rosita,
Yeah, Rosita.
because she played it smart. She goes back to where they had the battle with Dwight and the other group of saviors, where Denise got killed, and she was getting the guns off those walkers,
Right.
and then at the end of the episode, she's going to Eugene saying, "Make me bullets." So, and Michonne as well, and Carl. So not everybody in that camp is willing to just roll over and take it.
Right. Right. And the thing about it is, they all, they've looked up to Rick and stuff like that, but they understand that now. Okay, Rick's in this state of mind now to where he's just willing to just do whatever it takes to
Yep,
survive.
he's accepted it.
But at the same time, they are not willing to accept the fact that they want to live the rest of their life that way.
Right.
So they're going. I think something's going to happen where they're going to band together
Yeah.
and probably do something.
Definitely, that's their best shot, because the one thing they've always emphasized about the Saviors, even in the premiere where Maggie was saying, we have to go fight them, and Rick is like, they have an army, and even in this episode, that's what Rick sticks by. When Michonne is like, we can fight back, and Rick is like, they'd still have the numbers, and now they have their guns too, which is another huge problem.
Right. And well, that brings to like, because that's where you're most vulnerable is when you have no way to protect yourself and no way to fight back.
Yep.
And that's what Negan was aiming for. He's like, I want these people to bow to me. I want them to do whatever I say. If I take away their weapons, they're going to do that. So that's what he did. And interesting that we brought Maggie. That scene, I thought that was pretty slick.
Yeah.
That was
Great
pretty
scene.
slick. Because Negan now thinks that she has passed away, so she's pretty much eliminated from his mind. But yet she's at Hilltop.
Yeah. Where
So
we saw her have some history in the past, because she was talking to Gregory last season and was one of the people who was trying to negotiate there. And it's almost like before Deanna passed away, she saw something in Maggie. She saw that leadership quality, and if Maggie didn't have it before, seeing what happened to Glenn, I think really lit a fire under her, which goes back to the theme of the show, which is you have to fight to survive. And
right,
now, like you were talking about, now Michonne brought it up as well. Maybe we can go to the hilltop. Maybe we can try to work with them or something.
Right.
And no, like we said, we don't know anything in advance about next week's episode other than what we saw in the previews. But
Right.
we saw the Saviors coming to Hilltop to collect there. So
Exactly.
it's interesting to see if the Hilltop is going to take the same approach. Are they going to try to negotiate a bit more? Or is this going to be another situation where it's like, okay, they realize we don't have the numbers. And if that happens, maybe we see this idea of unity between these little communities, coming up. And that
Right.
may be their only shot to, get out of this situation.
And maybe since we see that they're going to Hilltop, we mentioned that Maggie is at Hilltop.
Yeah.
So interesting to see where that plays out.
Oh, yeah.
Because that could be a fallback on, the Rick in the group.
Yeah.
It could be. I
It
mean,
could
there's
be
just
bad.
so much, man. So much. It's so great. I love it. Another thing we're talking about too between ourselves, the Kingdom.
Yeah.
That's another the episode before last week's episode. There you had Carol and you had the ninja guy with the stick. Can't remember what his name
Morgan.
was. Yeah, Morgan. They pretty much do not know what's happened.
Yeah.
They don't know what has happened to Glenn. They don't know. They are completely blindsided. They don't know what's going on. But yeah, they've run to, this community, and it's called the Kingdom, and hopefully, some can lead into that. There's just so much, man. So much.
So many ways the season can go.
Right.
And another scene from this episode that was kind of heartbreaking in a way was when Rick is having the conversation with Michonne. After the Saviors have left, he's talking about, they took our mattresses and all this stuff, and Michonne is saying we can't live like this, and Rick is like, I made a decision. And then he starts talking about Judith. And everybody kind of speculated, everybody kind of knew there had been like some little jokes and even a couple little references to it in the show that Judith is Shane's daughter biologically.
Right.
And it had never been, at least to my knowledge, formally addressed until last night when Rick told Michonne, he's like, I know. He's like, I understood it and I accepted it a long time ago. And it's kind of interesting because, the best thing about any show is the characters.
Right.
The stories they go through, the plot and everything, it's all great, but these characters that we become attached to, really what keeps us coming back for more. And we've seen so much of Rick being this kind of wild man, biting people's throats out, fighting against the odds and, doing whatever he can to survive. And we're like, man, this guy's, really tough guy. But it's just like in real life, you never really know truly what somebody is dealing with.
Right.
And then to finally hear them talk about that and say, this is what's been going on in my head. I haven't told anyone, but this is how I've come to terms with, something in my life. It's really kind of heartbreaking. And it really highlights this whole theme of acceptance in this episode.
Yeah, it does. And like you were talking about building relationships with characters, we have. But I know as far as me, as far as you, we have built a relationship with these characters. It's like we feel what they feel, and that's what the creators were going for. They want us to feel what these characters are going through.
Right.
And you just got to think of Rick's case when he was talking about, Judith. And even though he knew it wasn't she wasn't his, but that's okay.
Right.
He's still accepts her as his daughter. He wants to be around to grow old, to raise her and stuff like that. So he has to do things to make sure that happens.
Right.
It's all about survival to him now, and he feels like this is the way to go. And and feeling that from him, it's like you kind of can relate to what would we do in that situation. If we had kids or children, hey, listen, I'm just trying to make sure they survive.
Right.
So that kind of brings a more understanding of reason why Rick is not like fighting back or took a resistance to Negan.
Right.
Yeah.
And another thing that I think is going to be really interesting moving forward after this episode is, Gregory, and from the Hilltop, we saw him in the preview talking about, Rick told us that, him and his group, they could handle the Saviors. And of course, we found out that after Rick went to what, we thought at the time was, oh, that's the Saviors compound. That was just one of their outposts.
Right.
With like a small subset of them there. and Rick and crew really didn't know what they were up against. And so it's going to be interesting because obviously Alexandria and the Hilltop are going to have to work with one another, probably with the Kingdom too, to
Yeah.
have even a slight chance against the Saviors. But there's going to be this conflict now because Gregory's going to tell them, "You said we could handle it," because we've seen in the preview we saw Simon, Negan's right hand man,
Right.
Mr. GTA 5, who's also a great casting choice. He's also been great. Um,
Right.
we saw him going to the hilltop and telling Gregory, "We need to talk." So
Right.
it's like, hey, you tried to overthrow us and you killed a bunch of our men. So, and like we were talking about too, what happens if they go there and then they find Maggie? And it's like
Oh my
Simon,
God.
he was there and he saw Maggie, and then he's gonna go back and relay to Negan, "Oh, by the way, Maggie's alive." So much stuff could happen, and I really hope that Rick and Gregory can get on the same page and realize, we made a bad decision. We were rash. We acted too fast. We should have planned this out. We did not know what we were up against, and they're going to have to work together moving forward, and that's this whole theme of unity really coming in, because you're
Right.
seeing slowly but surely some dissent, because you've, like we were talking about, Daryl has said he's not going to kneel. Then you see Michonne and Rosita saying we don't have to live like this,
Right.
and also now we're seeing, like we said, Carl,
Carl.
who was one of the only ones there who was trying to fight back at the time. um, I really hope that they can get on the same page, because if they don't, it's going to be bad news for everybody.
Most definitely. And I want to talk about Carl a little bit more, man. The cojones on that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, on that kid. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm telling you, he's the only one that said, "Hey, no, man, you said half."
Yeah.
And I guess this is going to play somewhere out later on down the line. Carl, I think, and this is just a prediction of mine, Carl is probably going to eventually probably maybe step up, maybe go over Rick.
Yeah.
And he's going to be the one of the main focal points of this show. You know,
Absolutely. We've seen times in the past where Carl was frustrated with Rick. They had a really great episode after the fall of the prison where everybody gets separated, where Rick and Carl, they go out to his house, and Carl is really, kind of being really hard on Rick, saying, you did the wrong thing and all this stuff. And now I think they're going to have that same situation again where Carl is kind of telling Rick, like you said, they said half, they're saying that we're playing by the rules, but really the rules are we do whatever they say or we get killed.
right?
And obviously he's young, he's got that rebellious spirit and everything. And two, to see, his love interest, Enid, who was in that situation where she's also getting victimized and bullied by these
Right.
saviors, had to be driving him crazy, man. And speaking of people being, almost to the breaking point, we saw a great
Yeah.
moment towards the end of that episode where Rick is holding Lucille. And
Oh
what
my God,
happens?
dude, man. I thought for an instant, which it almost made my heart like, yes, do it, man, do
Yeah.
it. But then again, it's like, oh man, don't, because if you do,
What happens to Carl and Judith and everybody else?
yeah, exactly. I know he wanted to so bad.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still a little bit of fight.
Yeah.
Still a little bit of fight, but he's just playing it smart.
Yeah. And we saw another instance too where Rick can be very calculating. There was the scene where they were being hunted by Gareth and the other people from Terminus.
Right.
And there was a scene where they're all in the church and they know that Gareth and his group are watching them. And we see what appears to be Rick taking a bunch of people and leaving the church. And a lot of us at the time were like, "Oh my God, Rick, what are you doing? That's such a bad move." And then when Gareth invades, all of a sudden Rick and Abraham come out of the shadows, and it's like, oh man, Rick set up an ambush there. So I think Rick he's got some fight left in him, and he's gonna have to kind of redirect it into that kind of cunning, tactical style. That way, because even we've always seen that even in his first appearance, when he used the guts trick,
Right. Yeah.
he still has a bit of that calculating edge, and I think that also might have been uh, what the show creators were kind of hinting at, where Negan sees the video of Rick with the beard when he was the wild man, and he's like, "Oh, I've killed people and everything," and Negan's like, "You're not that guy anymore," and he's like, maybe Rick isn't that guy anymore who is just going to go full speed ahead and say let's have a a shootout and see who wins. Maybe he is going to go back to that kind of clever, cunning style, because when you're at war, oftentimes that's what you have to do to win.
Yeah. Democracy. You have to have some type. You have to use your head.
Yeah.
And that's what I think that this all boils down to. He's trying to make it appear like, okay, you know, you've broke me. I'm gonna do what you say to Negan, but really in his mind, he's like, nah,
Yeah,
I'm not done yet.
yeah.
You know.
He's trying to think of a way out, and it has that's probably the hardest part to watch because you know it's killing them all inside.
Oh yeah, it's killing us too
Yeah,
because we're like,
absolutely.
oh my god,
Which just
you know.
shows the great direction the writing has taken in this story because we've seen so many times in this story our characters finally get something good and immediately it's taken away,
Right,
and they always fight back. And now we're seeing, oh man, this is a an antagonist which at their current state they can't overcome.
right.
The way they are right now and the way they've been in the past just can't win against this villain. Um, so we're kind of seeing our characters really having to shift gears, change the way they think, change the way they fight and they plan. And it's really rare. Hats off to the showrunners and the writers for that because it's really rare that
Absolutely.
you see a show that's been going on for this long and it's still finding new ways to reinvent itself.
It kind of feels like it's like it just aired.
Yeah,
You know, it still has that excitement. It's gonna be great, man. And the thing about it is, one more character that we want to mention here, Gabriel.
yeah,
I think he's gonna be a surprise.
yeah, yeah. I
I
like
think
Gabriel.
Oh my god, that one part, man,
Yeah,
that cracked me up.
he freaked Negan out. It was so great. He just walked up behind him. Negan's like, "Whoa, you are freaky as shit."
With you and your collar on, and yeah, then he just smiled away like,
Yeah.
"Hi, I'm Father Gabriel."
And I think
You
that
know,
there's a contrast, of course, between if you look at a character like Gabriel and a character like Abraham. Abraham was that kind of person. He was a member of the military, and he had
right,
that idea of like, okay, I'm going to fight for my people, defend what's right, and he really worked well with Rick for that reason because he's like, you're the leader of
absolutely,
our group. I'll back you up. I'll have your back. Gabriel, in a lot of ways, is kind of the same because, as a man of faith, he kept telling Rick, I believe this is going to work out. If Gabriel can find something he can have faith in, he's just like, Abraham, if he can find something he can fight for. Maybe he might not be as combative as Abraham was, but like we were
right.
talking about, that way of thinking, that brute force kind of mentality may not be great. So Gabriel may be kind of a wild card now. He may
Yeah,
be planning something because, it was implied that he did kind of come up with the plan to hide Maggie away. Of course, like we talked
right.
about next episode, that might
Yeah,
prove
the
to be a
next
bad idea.
be like, you stupid priest,
And
you know.
that's what's great about it because like every episode there are so many ways that things can go drastically wrong.
Right, right, exactly. And that's what makes the show great. You just have all these moments, you're always caught on suspense. Also, you have these moments where you want to go through a box of tissues. It's just overall great show, and there's more to come, and I cannot wait, man.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing.
Going to be amazing. And guys, like I've told you in the past, I think this is probably going to wrap us up. But like I've told you in the past, um, feel free to comment. Unfortunately, we're not be able to do a live stream.
Yeah, the savior showed up and took our live streaming equipment.
Yeah, they showed up. They took it away.
We are happy to pay tribute though.
Yeah, happy we didn't get our faces smashed in. So it's okay. We're surviving right now. That's
All right,
what
there
we're
are
doing.
rules, guys.
So hopefully the next episode of Joe Talks Live, it will actually be live. And we'll be doing more of this and have Josh back on the show. And just leave your comments and leave your feedback. Anything that you guys would like to have discussed on the next episode, just let me know and we will make it happen. Thank you so much, and thank you, Josh, for
It's
being on
been
the show.
great, man.
All right, man. Catch you guys next time on the next episode of Joe Talks Live.
See you later, guys.